Let's talk about mid-season clothing. The season's underway. You're definitely hunting out of a tree stand. You're starting to put in more time and you're kind of awaiting that pre-rut and that rut to happen. Depending on where you're at, your temperatures can certainly vary. But once I move into that type of situation where the days are getting shorter and the amount of traffic from animals on their feet is getting greater, that's when I'll move into this type of system. And so, with this type of system, first, in regards to my outerwear, I'm going to be moving into kind of a mid weight material that has breathability, it has flexibility. It's obviously in more of a whitetail type pattern. Um, but what it doesn't offer is it doesn't offer that wind or moisture barrier. It's during that time of year where things are pretty settled. A lot of times you're having to be deadly quiet on the stand. So having that material to where you can move around without noise is going to be important. Now, here's where I change things up. It's not in what you would see on the outside. And I certainly move into these pieces because some of these types of pieces will offer you bigger cargo pockets, more carrying space. For example, on this top right here, you have a place where you can set a rangefinder in there. You also have a jacket that's more suitable for having your harness, your safety harness coming out. So underneath this layer is actually where the change happens, because if it's in the mornings where you're typically going to start to encounter some of those first cool mornings where you might see some of the very first frosts, that's when I will change my base layer and start to move in the middle weight of your base layer so that you have not only the moisture wicking properties, but you start to contain that heat closer to your body. And so I'll choose a heavier weight base for the mornings, both in the top and the pant. And then in the evenings, I have the ability to change up to the same type of system, only in the lighter weight base. Because by then, the heat of the day has happened. You're going to get in the stand. It's going to be the warmest part of the day. And chances are you're not going to be out once that temperature really stops to drop again. So during that pre-rut or mid-season time frame, having a super quiet, high capacity cargo type outer, but then have the ability to either have a thin or that thicker base is what I need. As a bow hunter, one of the things that you're going to definitely have to make a decision on is what type of pack is really best for you. And honestly, there's a lot of different options on the market, but for good reason. And I just want to give you a quick look here at 3 different packs that I have that really serve the purposes throughout the majority of my year, all the way from the turkey season until the end of the late season for whitetail. The first thing I have here is this is actually a pack vest combo, which is what I have for the turkey season as well as the real early opening seasons where the weather is still really hot. This is something that's great for early season mule deer or being out in the open hot country during those first weeks of antelope season. And honestly, the way that I do it is typically when I pack these different seasons away, I typically try to pack the gear that goes with that pack in them. And I'll walk you through that here in a little bit. So this is my early season whitetail or spot and stalk type pack. It's smaller, it's lighter weight. I'm limited on what I can put in it, but I really reduce things down to the necessities because, again, it's hot and usually you're not looking at all day hunts during those particular times. Now, the next pack I want to show you is a pack that is something that I definitely use for the majority of my Western hunting, because this allows more real estate for packing things like first aid kits, temporary shelters, and then the ability to pack multiple layering systems in one pack, because usually once that part of the season starts to progress, I'm also not returning back to camp every few hours after a hunt. I'm out there for the day. So being able to have more water, more shelter, your first aid, your food, all those sort of things is going to become really important. The other thing is some of the packs that are more suitable for whitetail are probably going to have a much quieter fabric and finish. They may not be fully waterproof, but they're definitely quieter for a whitetail type situation. Whereas a pack like this is going to be more water resistant and also much more durable for abrasion and a real extreme heavy load. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you about this pack right here is typically following any type of hunting season that I have, I actually like to load my packs back up with the type of camo and the type of layering that I use for that particular season. So for this example, in this pack right here, I have a layer for my jacket that is a wind barrier layer. I also have a full rain layer that's in here. And then I have my insulation layers as well as my base layers and my pants all packed into this bag. Now, another thing that I've done and something that I learned later on in hunting that I would love to pass on to you as a new hunter is the importance of this organization, because one of the things I've continually struggled with as a hunter was getting up to season and trying to realize where all my gear is from the year previous. So a habit that I started to do was after each of these different seasons, I actually pack the gear back in there that's relative to that season. And then I will make a checklist that I put on the top of that bag once I zip it up, to where when I open this up, I can realize I have my wool base layering, I have my intercept top and bottom, I have my mid layers or my insulation layers, and I also have that wind barrier, I have the rain barrier, and then right here I've also said that I have my elk calls in this, and I also have a note here that says needed backpack stuff, and on this particular list is toilet paper, a light, a knife, a rope, and my survival kit. So I have notes right here in this thing letting me know that those particular items are probably in another pack that I used after this, which I'm certain are going to be in this last pack that I'm going to show you over here, which is a pack that is much more suited for all day sits when I'm whitetail hunting, because this has the ability to put Yeti thermoses on both sides. You're able to put your hydration there. I'm able to have my safety line on this backpack because I'm normally carrying my bow and I'm either riding my bike or hiking to the stand. I have the ability to put my bow on the top of my backpack. And then inside of my pack, I'm going to have things relative to that type of hunting, which again, this is my whitetail pack, including a little limb saw for me to trim limbs, a bow hanger. It's going to have my rattling antlers, and it's going to have a grunt tube. So if you make it a point to, if you have different packs, keep notes of what's in that pack and try to reload the pack of the gear that you use during that season, because once you've moved on from that particular timing of year to another either layering system, another camo shade, or another type of insulation, you're able to have it all organized according to when and what you're going to be doing during that season. A super awesome addition that you can make to your whitetail gear is to find a bino harness system that allows you to have access to the things that you utilize the most. This system that I have here gives me the ability to not only access my optics, but also access my rangefinder, my release aid, and a number of other things. So I just wanted to talk with you about the system that I have and how I have it set up to where I can whitetail hunt with minimal movement. The first thing I have is open access on this right side to my rangefinder, because typically if I'm going to be ranging, I'm going to use my right hand since I'm right-handed. So having this as a place where I can get a range and be able to just either drop that back into that slot or to even just drop this to my side is super helpful, because a lot of times during the rut, and especially with very crafty whitetail, your opportunity might happen in a flash and you need to be able to just access it and react to make that shot. So having the easiest access possible to my rangefinder is first and foremost. Now, the other thing is I shoot a handheld release aid for my bow. So my release is actually right here in this outer pocket, again, to where I can access it with my right hand and clip it on the string. A lot of times once I'm in the tree and my bow is hanging, my release will be on my bow and sitting off to the side where I don't have to dig it out of this pocket. It's also in a place where if I am commuting to or from my hunting location, I also have the ability to access a release if I encounter an animal on my way to or from. Some people make the mistakes of having their releases in their backpack or tucked away in a pocket, and honestly, you never know when you have to have fast access. Now here on the side, just as a survival practice, I always carry a lighter on me to where if I didn't have a backpack or I didn't have my normal supplies, I can always start a fire if I need to. Now on the other side is actually my face paint, which I use regularly as a whitetail hunter. And the other thing that you can have the option of putting on the side if you're not someone that utilizes a lighter is you can put a wind checker here, so that when you're in your tree and you're trying to figure out the wind direction, you can simply remove that, check the wind, and put it back into location without having to turn around and fish it out of different backpack pockets or try to remember what pocket you have in the pants that you're wearing. Now on this left side, I have a backup release, which I always travel with a backup. So that's here on the left side, just in case of an emergency. But this left pocket, I actually keep open, and a lot of times I'll have this lid open and my phone can sit right in there. So once again, I can have that in there. If I need to look at it, I can do it like this, but still stay tucked against the tree and kind of in a fixed position rather than having to create all this additional movement. Now for optics, my optics are right here. And honestly, for whitetail, the optic that I have preferred for the majority of my hunting is a 10x42 power binocular. The 10x42s kind of give you the best of both worlds, because they're normally in a size that's fairly compact, in a size that can still fit in a harness rig that's this size, but it also gives you really good clarity. And if you want to know how binoculars work, when you look at a pair of binoculars that are a 10x42, the 10 is the magnification, and the 42 ultimately is the size of this end piece. And what that number does is the bigger that number, the bigger the bell and the more light that it's going to allow you to gather. So being at that 42 number, I've found that it works really well in low light conditions. If that number gets to be smaller, it starts to get a little bit more difficult to see during those low light conditions, which, to be honest with you, is pretty common when whitetail hunting. Now, the next thing is going to be here in the back, there's a zipper, and in that zipper is normally where I keep my hunting license is, because as a rule, you always want to keep your hunting license on you. So if it's not app-based model where your licenses are stored in the state's app, then having that physical tag on you and not just in your car or in your truck is going to be important. So the one thing I know that I'm always going to have with me, regardless of if it's early season or late season, is I'm always going to have this harness with my binos, my rangefinder, and my releases. And with that is going to be my hunting license.